Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age. They may take hold of the life that is truly life. The life that is truly life. Despite what we might think, despite what we might hope for, despite what commercials and ads try to press upon us, that real life is not simply the accumulation of more things, that real life is not simply success, that people look at you in awe and in splendor, that real life is not having bigger and better and always chasing for that next thing. Real life is not contentment because your pile is big enough, because your paycheck is large enough, because your job is prestigious enough. Real life comes in the presence of God. And any of those things that pull our hearts away from Him and to stuff or to things, or which we can just flat out call idols, are something less than real life. Smaller than real life. Something worse, less fulfilling, less certain. Something less dependable than that which is real and true and lasting. If we put absolutely anyone or anything else on the thrones of our hearts, a throne that has been built by God and for God alone to sit upon. Anything and everything we try to sit there as our number one priority, as our top goal, as what we look towards in hope, faith, and trust, it is going to let us down. It is going to break our hearts. It will fail, it will fall, it will collapse, it will go away. Put not your faith in 21-3 leads at halftime. Because Tennessee just might come back and embarrass you. The stuff of this world is fleeting and not lasting. You can think you've got it all made. I'm at the top of my game. Until, of course, you're not. Do not put your hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. You think you have it, and then you don't. Easy come, easy go. It's in your pocket, and there's a hole. You sign on the dotted line, or it just never works out the way that you think it will. And if your hope is in stuff, if it's in things, it's going to let you down. That's just all there is to it. Because there is no thing, and there is no stuff that you can count on like Christ. That you can trust in like the Lord. That is worthy of our hope. Now, before we assume that this is solely about like the super successful and the ultra wealthy, let me say, I know firsthand of folks who are very comfortable in their lives and in their financial status, and it's no big deal. Wealth is a tool, just like any other. I think they use it faithfully and well. And I know folks who barely have change in their pockets and nothing in the bank, but all they can think about is making it big, scoring it rich, or just having more. So just wealth itself is not the issue here. We are reminded here, as we are elsewhere, it is the love of that money. It is putting your hope in that stuff. It is placing your trust in the things of this world that can't help as just dumb stuff to not be able to carry you through, but to eventually fall and fail and break and decay. So, whether you have what feels like plenty and a lot, or whether you feel like I'm not completely sure how that next bill is going to be paid, this has less to do with your accounts and more to do with your heart. In what, in whom is your hope and trust? So we have the story that Jesus tells, but it is backed up with every single reading we have today. Every single reading makes that same point. From Old Testament to New, from the Amos the prophet to Paul writing to Timothy, even our psalm, this is what is undergirded. Your hope and your trust ought to be in the Lord, because when He is your hope and trust, He's a shield. He is your buckler. He's going to hide you under the shadow of His wings. There's not going to be an arrow that will pierce you. There's not going to be a terror of the night that is going to overwhelm you. But if you are like the people of Jerusalem and you're just sort of kicking back because, hey, baby, we got it made. God's holy nation, I'm doing pretty well for myself. Who cares what happens outside of my doors? Who cares what happens to the rest of my nation or that other kingdom? Who cares? Because I've got what I want. And I'm doing just fine. And Amos warns them, your time will come sooner rather than later. You drink wine by the bowlful. You cover yourself with oil and lotion and perfume. You don't care a bit that the other children of Israel have been carried off into exile, but you know what's going to happen? That hope and that trust and that faith that you've put in your stuff, the bowls full of wine and junk like that, guess what? Not going to last. Then who's going to help you as you are carried off into exile? Bowls of wine, they don't care. But that is what will happen. Your hearts have been hardened by your own comfort. Isn't that weird, paradoxically? That our hearts harden when our lives are softer? But when our lives are harder, aren't our hearts usually softer? Don't we tend to fall on our knees and beg God's presence when we're desperate, when we're hurting, when there's a calamity or a trial? God, I just want to be near. Mercy, have mercy. Give me what I need just today. Give me this day my daily bread. Just be with. I mean, do we tend to say that when we feel like we're on top of the world or on the bus? So, comfortable lives can lead to very hard hearts and vice versa. Does it have to be that way? No. Does human nature make it really, really easy? Yes. Yes. Ask a Gator fan what complacency at halftime will do. And you will know. You will know. There is never a lead too big, nor is there a bank account too large that can cover everything that you might need. And a time may indeed come where you find yourself on the short end of the equation. And if your faith and hope has been in that which is uncertain, you will have no one and nothing left. You got to fight it. Fight the good fight with all your might. This is what Paul is explaining to Timothy. He must be doing that because this is not easy. Because we're fighting against our very nature that sort of enjoys comfort, and we like comfort. And, frankly, I gave blood, and I'm a little bit lightheaded, and I'm kind of looking forward to going home and taking a nap. Ooh, a nap on a Saturday. Who wants one of those? Yeah? Except, of course, when we start planning our days around our leisure. Planning our days. Are the mothers laughing at me because they can't have naps?
Because it's Sunday.
Because it's Sunday.
Saturday.
Did I say Saturday? Did I say I just gave blood? Hey, Saturday was a traumatic day, okay? It was a long day. So we are offered then this story. So let's reverse our context a little bit and be reminded that Jesus is talking to a particular group of people. There are Pharisees involved, and they've been kind of harping on him. The Pharisees, which occurs in about 4 or 5 verses just prior to this. So if you open your Bibles, which we were happy enough to actually stick on your chairs this time, and you look back at chapter 16 in Luke, the longer gospel reading from before this one was also making the point about serving 2 masters. You cannot serve God and mammon or wealth or whatever. But then There's 4 or 5 verses that just kind of get skipped past sometimes because they're not on the lectionary cycles. Before we get to this parable that Jesus tells, it reminds us in verse 14 that the Pharisees are still there, the Pharisees are still listening, and what do the Pharisees love? Verse 14 says they love money. The Pharisees love money. Now, remember, these were guys who were very scrupulous on the little details of the faith. There were many things that they did right, but one of the things ostensibly that they're doing wrong is that their hearts desired wealth. Even though their outward appearance was very holy, very pious, very righteous, inside, what they were after was stuff. Now, maybe they made this connection that, holy and righteous people get stuff because God rewards them. For whatever reason they come up with it, like the pastor who's asking for money because his current Gulfstream jet isn't small enough and you really need to help him out. My Gulfstream jet is real small. I don't see any of you writing any checks. So anyway, you've got these Pharisees who love money. And Jesus tells a story, and he says, there's this rich guy, really rich, arrayed in fine and splendiferous occasions, and he ate wonderful festival foods and blah, blah, blah. And at his gate, at his front door, was this miserable wretch named Lazarus. And Lazarus is a beggar. Lazarus has nothing. Lazarus is depending on the kindness and mercy of strangers to keep him alive and to keep him fed. It's so bad that he's just there in misery at this guy's front door that the dogs lick his sores. And this man, the rich man, does nothing. So they both die. The rich man finds himself in torment, in flame, and in agony. He looks heavenward, and who does he see? That guy that I must have stepped over every day to get in and out of my property. Lazarus is there, and he is there with Father Abraham. He's in the bosom of Abraham. Now, that's kind of Old Testament code word for heaven and for the promises of God. Father Abraham was a real person, a historical person, a biblical figure, but he also represents the covenant. Because it is with Abram that God makes the covenant with Israel. He says, Abram, I want you to leave your home. You come from Ur of Chaldee, and I want you to follow me. And I'm going to take you someplace else. Leave all your stuff. Leave everything that you know. Leave your neighborhood, your family, your friends, and I want you to come because I'm going to give you a promised land. And you, though you're old and dusty and decrepit, you are going to have more children than the stars, and I will bless all the world through you. So that covenant is represented within the person of Father Abraham, the father of the nation of Israel, the father of their faith, and the father of the covenant. So for Lazarus to be in the bosom of Abraham, to be close to Abraham, being held by Abraham, is this reminder. God's promise and covenant is being fulfilled, not just to a nation, but to this miserable wretch of a beggar. So there he is in heaven, and the rich man begging for help. How about you send Lazarus with just a little bit of water, because I am so terribly hot. He says, no, can't do that. Your lifetime you receive good things, now they're gone. In his lifetime, he received jack. And now it is his turn to receive comfort and blessings. Is the rich man in hell because he didn't feed Lazarus? I would argue, and not a rhetorical question, I mean, I'm okay with somebody saying, yes. I think the answer is no. Because I don't think that the solution to this man's dilemma was giving someone a sandwich. I think it goes deeper than that. Because this is a matter of his heart, and therefore his soul. And just giving someone a scrap to eat off of your lavish table doesn't sound, based on the context of the whole, to be sufficient to turn the rich man's heart away from his stuff and back to God. Now, I'm not arguing that, well, he shouldn't have fed Lazarus. Of course he should have fed Lazarus. He had plenty, and this guy was starving, and he was right there at his doorstep. And how can you not help someone? How can you not take that mercy as God has been merciful to you? But the real issue is, we get nothing from this that the rich man has thought of anyone other than himself. Case in point, he is suffering in what you would think would be the ultimate humiliation. My life is now over, and I have gotten nothing but torment. And what does he ask Father Abraham to do? You know that guy that I used to step over? Be a deer and send him to fetch me water. Make him come serve me. Isn't that what he said? It might have sounded a little nicer because it was in between screams of pain. But he still sees Lazarus as someone who ought to be serving him. And even when you think that there's hope for this guy, that he can possibly think of someone other than himself when he brings up his brothers. Well, I don't want my brothers to be in torment like me, and I know that they've got the same sort of problem, so send Lazarus to talk to them. Once again, he's ordering people around. Lazarus is somebody who can do his thing. We have a guy who is so ensconced in luxury, his mind and his thoughts and his heart will go nowhere other than to himself. And even in abject humiliation and in torment, what was he thinking about? Now Lazarus, he wants Lazarus to do stuff. He's thinking about himself. Comfort me. Save my brothers. Go convince them. Now that's just a little bit of textual evidence, and maybe you can say, well, he could still be kind of a good guy, but he's made a lot of bad decisions or whatever. I don't think so. Now, you hear me on a regular basis talk about how being able to proclaim Christ as Lord is not just a spiritual matter, but it also has practical effects. That Jesus has come to redeem every part of us inside and out. Okay, our spirits and our bodies, our emotions and our actions. That all of these things ought to offer glory to God, not just the, well, on the inside I love Him very much, but on the outside I do whatever I feel like. Yeah, that's from, remember last week where we did yes and no. That's precisely what we're getting back to. That body and spirit ought to be in unity, offering praise and devotion to God. What can we see in this? That this guy's heart and his spirit, not just his actions, are far from God. That even if he had given even if he had given Lazarus a sandwich, Abraham says, I'm not going to send Lazarus to your brothers. Number one, I can't. But number two, even if I did, they won't listen. Not even if someone was to rise from the dead, will they listen to that? Doesn't that lead you to believe that the problem with this man and his brothers is more deep-seated than them offering a little bit of food? That from the inside out, that self-absorbed, self-important, comfortable in what I have, with a hope and a trust in my wealth, with a love of money. Not that money's bad, not that wealth is evil, but where is his heart? It's at the stuff. That's what's most important. That is what my life is built on. And I'm going to have a good life by having good stuff. When that good stuff and that good life has come to an end, you realize it wasn't a very good life at all. Because what comes next is very, very not good. And those who have been deprived of such good things find an everlasting and an enduring comfort even beyond the grave. Because their hope wasn't in this life. And their hope wasn't in this stuff. Man, because they didn't have any. But remember what we talked about before, that when you are in times of trouble or need or turmoil, how easy it is to be down on your knees. How easy it is to be asking for God's mercy and forgiveness. But when things are going just kind of fine, or especially when things are going great, how easy it is then to allow our hearts and our minds to drift far from Him. You have these two, one with everything and one with nothing. Which of their hearts was dependent on the trust and hope of God. It seems clear from this fuller explanation, it was Lazarus and not the rich man. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. The Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Words from another guy who knew what it was like to be so miserable that dogs would lick his sores. This time from Job. Job who had everything, and Job who lost it all. Money and homes and stuff, and even family, and his physical health. And yet, Job worships, ascribing his hope not to the things of this world that may come and may go, but to God alone. And this is what I think we see, the distinction between Lazarus and the rich man. But there's a point being made that's even beyond this, isn't there? What else are the Pharisees harping about with Jesus? We've heard them complain that, oh, you eat with sinners. These people are wicked, or you're not doing enough or doing the right thing because we're scrupulously following all of these millions and millions and millions of tiny little detailed laws. And he says, yes, but your heart is far from God. But their hearts are far from God, but certainly they would listen and be drawn back to God if someone would come back from the dead. Or maybe some folks won't. Jesus tells this story not just about wealth and where your heart is, but he's also talking to the Pharisees and all of those who cannot see what is in front of them, but the mercy and love of God himself. Abraham says, I'm not going to send Lazarus to your brothers because they already have Moses and the prophets. What does that mean? That means they have the scriptures. They have the law of Moses and they have all the prophets. They have the whole Old Testament, just like everybody else. If they want to know how to not suffer and be in torment, it's right there in front of them. If they want to know how they ought to have led their lives, how they ought to put their hope in God and not their stuff, how they ought to have cared and had mercy on those who are in need, because God has mercy on you and God has cared for you and your needs. It's all right there. It's all throughout Moses. It's all throughout the law. It's all throughout Torah. It's all throughout the prophets. It's all right there. And people with hearts that stray far from God, are there not scriptures available? Do we not have a Bible in front of us? Are they not in every bookstore? Are there not 17 apps and 400 websites? Do not the vast majority of people have one somewhere? Well, but they will repent and turn to the Lord if somebody would just raise the dead. That is so spectacular. Boy, they sure would listen. Unless they don't. For this has been offered to us, who in relation to God are only beggars and can only ask for his mercy, his provision, and daily bread. And someone has indeed been raised from the dead, and we know what we ought to do in this life and in the life to come. So where's your heart? We're told that's where our treasure will be, because it's reciprocal. It works both ways. Whatever you value, your heart goes there. When your heart goes somewhere, you tend to value it. It works both ways. To trust in the Lord or in stuff, only one is not uncertain. One is always dependable. Only one will never let us down, and only one will fit on the throne of our hearts. For it has been made by him and for him and him alone. Stuff is good. Stuff is a blessing. Stuff is a joy. Do not put your heart or your hope in it. Give it constantly and always in gratitude and thanksgiving to the Lord who has offered it to us. And the Lord who looks at us in love and gives us beggars of mercy, compassion, and even today, our daily bread.